Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Rendezvous. It's a pleasure to be here. Rendezvous is a program created by Dr. Rhonda Chervin. I'm Louise Walkup, the moderator for today's program, and our panelists are Maria Smith and Dave Basconi. We're all friends of Rhonda, and we're all trying to grow in love and holiness. And on these weekly programs that Dr. Rhonda created, we try to grow in love with Jesus and in holiness. And we do this by exploring a chapter a week of something Rhonda wrote in one of her many books. The books we're discussing this week and that we've been discussing for a while is called Give Me Your Heart, Preparing for Eternal Life, written by Charles Rich. And you can access that book free of charge on Rhonda's website, www.rondachervin.com. Just click on her free ebooks and you'll see it there. Okay, so let's begin with prayer. Dear Lord, excuse me, we ask you to pour your blessings on Dr. Rhonda and her family, and on our wonderful listeners, and on our panel. Holy Spirit, please inspire us with thoughts that will help all of us grow in love and holiness. And we ask Charles Rich, who is smiling at us from heaven, to pray for all of us and lead us in the right light while we discuss his writings. So today we'll be finishing up our discussion that we started last week on on discouragement. And before the program started, we were talking with one another about Labor Day and about work. So we'll talk about that too and relate it to Charles Rich. And we'll continue the conversation that the three of us started before the program. However, following in Rhonda's tradition, we will start the program with just a quotation about the person we're discussing or the topic, Charles Rich. And this will give you a little more background information and shed light on him so that you have a better overall view of him. Okay, and the quote I decided to go with is from a biography of Charles Rich that Rhonda wrote. The biography is called Hungry for Heaven, and it got this title because Charles was always hungry for heaven. He couldn't wait to die and get to heaven, but as luck would have it, he lived a long, long life from 1899 to 1998. So it talks about his work, which was very unusual. I didn't quite understand it when I first read it because it just seemed too strange to me. When he was young, he worked in restaurants as a waiter, and he tried to schedule his hours as a waiter so that he could go to the New York Public Library. He used to spend as much time as he could in the library, just reading and reading and reading, searching for truth, looking for truth, just a voracious appetite. And it's understandable because he was coming from an atheistic background and all of a sudden believed in Christianity, that there was something out there. So he wanted to find something. He wanted to find meaning and purpose. So he spent many hours in the library and worked as a waiter. And then in Rhonda's book, I'll quote, she mentions what happened to his work history. Quote, during his teen years, he was quite ill. His most severe physical pain came from stomach trouble and ulcers. Later on, he developed diabetes, prostate trouble, and failing eyesight. This led to his being classified as disabled and put on a government pension. And later on she writes, he would not have considered marriage since he was sure he never wanted to devote himself to work, but instead to the search of truth. And the last sentence I'll quote is, the Jesuits told him he could work in the kitchen. In exchange, he got $5, which paid for his room off the chapel. So basically, Charles Rich was a lay contemplative. He used to love to read and read and read, and then he used to write his insights on what he read. And he did help the Jesuits out as he could. He found it hard to work because he was always drawn to contemplation, to God. And I had never heard the word lay contemplative before Charles came around. So I thought this would be a good introduction to Labor Day, which is something we just happened to start talking about before the program. We wished each other a good Labor Day and joked as to how busy it was. In the Catholic tradition, labor is really interesting because the work we do is a continuation of the seventh day of creation. God in Genesis created the world, and we can do things, we can move things, we're not just robots. We can have an effect on the world, so we can change the world by our work. And originally, God didn't want our work to be as hard as it is for all of us. I would imagine most of you find work exhausting and difficult, because in Genesis chapter 2, they were tilling the garden, and it was pleasant, and the weather was great, and it was wonderful. But after the fall, Genesis 3, work became very toilsome, very difficult. God never intended it to be that way, but because of Adam's free will in particular, it became toilsome. So in the Catholic tradition, although labor is difficult, it has three wonderful characteristics. It is creative, it is redemptive, and it is sanctifying. And they say it's creative because it's a continuation of the work God started in Genesis. When you work on your garden, you continue beautifying the work. When you work in your office or wherever, the factory, you continue producing and changing the world. So that's creative. It's redemptive because it's in our work that we become who we are, and that we can find redemption because we offer our work in union with Jesus, who worked also. He worked with Joseph in carpentry, and Jesus carried his cross every day of his life until Calvary. So we must unite ourselves with Jesus, who worked, to find meaning and redemption. And the last one, it's sanctifying. It's sanctifying in that it animates earthly reality with the Spirit of Christ. So the Catholic viewpoint of work is found in the Catechism 2427, if you want to read more. And also John Paul II wrote a lovely encyclical, Labrum Exerciens, where he said we find ourselves in our work and we make our friends. And that work is, although work is difficult, there is meaning and redemption to be found through it. So that's my introduction to Labor Day, and Maria and David and I were just talking about how we remember leisure and labor from when we were children. Do you want to state some of the recollections you had, Maria?
Sure. I'm going to refer back to what you were speaking about, that work is creative, redemptive, and sanctifying. So work, it really ennobles us and brings us closer to God. And I also want to talk about the importance of leisure. Labor and leisure go together. You really can't have one that's fulfilling, that's sanctifying, without the other. The labor that we do should bring us closer to God as we are co-creators with Him, whatever it is that we're creating, whether it's a work of art or whether it's a software program or a teacher planner, whatever we're doing. And it's redemptive because as we labor, we are getting closer to God and we are being redeemed and sanctified. And leisure is what we need to do to reflect upon what we have created, to reflect on God, who is our Redeemer, and to help us become holier. So we need that leisure time unfortunately, for so many in modern culture, there is no leisure. There is time off from work in which people go on to many activities, entertainments, distractions. What movie shall we see? What show shall we go to? What sports event shall we attend? What party is going on? And all these things are just more activities and work. Work cannot really be sanctifying unless we have the leisure in which we reflect upon our work, what we have done, what we are about to do. That is what God himself did on the seventh day when he, quote unquote, rested. He did not create. He sat back and admired his creation, his work. It's like an artist who has done a painting and worked very hard on it. Then when they are done, they sit back, they look at it, they admire it, they dwell in it. And that's what leisure should be, to recreate us so we can again start the labor.
Oh, I love that. That is absolutely beautiful, Maria.
Yeah, very nice.
Absolutely beautiful, yeah. I took a couple notes. I'll have to remember that. Yes. And Dave, you were talking about the leisure days of your youth?
Yes. Back in the day, I grew up in a family hardware store, so we were open 6 days a week, very long hours. Even when the store was closed, there was work to be done behind the scenes. But Sundays, back then, stores were closed on Sundays. We had what we called the blue laws. And I really think that we don't know how much we gave up when we went from most stores being closed on Sundays to this 24/7 life we live. Because that's when we went to visit relatives, and I was just remarking on going down to this to some relatives where the adults sat around in the old Italian fashion of just talking. Italian was spoken mostly because my grandparents, came from Italy, and I played with my cousins outside. The food was great, and we didn't have to worry about being anywhere. We didn't have to worry about someone had to leave and go to work or anything like that. We all had the day off, and we relaxed. And again, it was just a great experience. And as I was mentioning before the show, I just thought the whole world lived that way, and I think a lot of people did. But then once things started to change to where everything was going 7 days a week, we lost all of that. And I really think we gave up a real treasure by not having that one day off where, as you said, Maria, we can reflect on our work. We can reflect on our week. And that puts it all in perspective, and it just kind of makes it, so much richer when we do things that way.
Yeah, that's true. I remember the days of the blue laws, and Sundays were a day where families got together. Kids played outside together. Parents had no clue exactly where we were, and it didn't matter because there were so many of us. We looked out for one another in a sense, and the food was all homemade, and love was dished out by the spoonful on the table. But it was certainly a great time for family gathering. Is that how you remember your younger days too? And I thought everybody did the same thing. When I was a kid, I thought everybody ate supper like at 5 o'clock, and everybody did the same thing on Sunday, gathered with family. Is that the way it was for you, Maria?
No, because actually we left most of our family in Italy, so we didn't have family here. So for us, Sundays was my parents did not work. They had their own shop, a tailor shop. They did not work on Sunday. We'd go to Mass. We'd come home. We'd eat the regular Italian meal, pasta, meatballs with sauce and meatballs. And then we just have a very quiet day. So it was actually, in a way, very lonely. I would have really loved to have what Dave was describing. And I did have that in Italy, but I grew up and I spent most of my life in America, so I didn't have that.
Oh, that's too bad.
Okay.
Yeah. And then before the program, Dave, you had mentioned that you had wanted to discuss a couple articles that have been passing around on the web this week. One by Father Altier and then a shorter one. Did you want to talk about that now?
Well, yeah. As I was getting ready, we were still going to finish up a little bit on Discouraged. In this last couple of weeks, this scandal in the church, this sex abuse. Now, at first I was really angry. I was seething, and it was easy to get discouraged. But over the last couple of weeks, some insights have come along that have helped make some sense of this mess. And actually, now I believe some good and positive things can happen. And basically, I think mainly the good and positive will be the Catholic Church getting herself restored back to how Jesus wants it. And that homily by Father Robert Altier, he said, this time Mother Mary is going to clean things up, and it has already begun. And Louise, I was going to suggest that maybe at some point before we end the show, you give the listeners the link to that homily. It was just excellent for me. And also, I was thinking of some things. I just wanted to read something. And again, this was from a homily many years ago, but it stood out, and I remembered it. I remembered the main points. And hopefully I'll do it justice, but hopefully it can help some people if they're still maybe a little discouraged and all. But it goes like this. A wealthy man asked a local well-known artist if he could capture the piece of Jesus Christ on canvas. The artist said yes and agreed to do a painting. Weeks later, he called the man to his studio to look at his work. The painting was the perfect day as viewed from a hilltop. Blue sky, some white clouds, and a quiet village below. The man said no, this was not what he had in mind, and asked the artist to try again. He agreed. Weeks later, the man was called to see the second painting, this time a tender moment of a mother holding her infant with an expression of pure joy. But again, the man said no. Can you try again? The artist agreed, but was very confused as to what the man was looking for. Weeks went by, nothing. More weeks and still nothing. Then one day the artist picked up his brush and started to paint. He called the man back, and after carefully studying the painting, he said, yes, this is the piece of Christ. For this time, the artist had painted something very different. This time it was a storm, the worst storm you could imagine. You could almost hear the thunder coming off the canvas, pitch black until streaks of lightning lit the scene. Then you saw huge waves crashing against the cliff. But when you looked closely in a crevice on the cliff, you saw a dove on her nest, content that despite the raging storm all around her, everything was going to be okay. And that is how we come to know the peace of Jesus Christ. It's the storms in our lives, not the perfect days. And I think, end of story, end of homily. And I think we as a church are in the midst of a horrible storm, but we should perhaps understand it in the way that the dove understands her storm. I think once the work of Our Lady is done, we will know the peace of Christ in ways we cannot have imagined. So I just thought that homily might help if people are, like I said, a little discouraged at this time.
That's beautiful.
Yes,
beautiful.
very beautiful.
Yeah. I have the address that you referred to from the homily from Father Altier. It's just a weird address, but it's https://August-19-2018 but it was just a wonderful homily because it emphasized not to get discouraged and not to despair, that Mary is finally cleaning up the way a mother cleans her kid's room. And he made the analogy of a mother always telling her teenager, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room, and he never does. So finally the mother goes in with the broom and cleans throws things out and cleans everything spick and span. It was never so clean before. at first the teenager is having anxiety attacks, and then when he sees what's going on, he's at peace. So, so Father Altier says, Mary's cleaning our church, and when she's done with it, we'll have the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So it's not anything to really dread. It's something that we should be grateful for, but certainly we should be praying, and we should be fasting and offering sacrifices, because prayer and fasting are the two wings on the dove that bring our petitions to God. So that's our contribution, and that's part of our greatest work, Maria, as you were saying before the program.
Yes.
Yes, our work is to love God and the salvation of the church. Excuse me.
Yes, so right, and so with everything that's going on now, this terrible crisis, we really have to do our own part, which is to really grow closer to God ourselves, to ask God what we can do to strengthen the church, to strengthen members of our family, our friends, our parish, our community. And when we're doing what we can, God will give us this joyful hope, even in the midst of this horrendous storm that we are currently in the church.
Keep talking, Louise. I think Louise.
Yes. I'm trying to. Yeah, I was just thinking of. Yeah. Well, I think we can actually just leave the discussion of the church for now. Perhaps we can even pick it up again next week. But we can go to what we are currently on, the book by Charles Rich, and the topic that we were discussing last week was discouraged. We can do a little bit more on that. I did have more thoughts on that. And actually one of the things was what you were speaking about, Dave, last week about the quote that St. Augustine says that we should not promise ourselves better times because we cannot really be truly, totally, completely happy in this present life at all. And no one can. And yet we can do everything we can. Yet people do everything they can to strive to find this perfect happiness. Instead, it is really actually getting back to the beautiful picture that you painted about the storm. We are to find our happiness, our joy, our hope in the midst of conflict, problems, difficulties, great and small. Sometimes the greater ones really oppress us and really weigh us down. And sometimes it's the little things in life that we just get so tired of day after day, just the little problems, the little annoyances, the little contradictions. And so really, we really need to find that hope in our current lives, no matter what's going on around us, and to bring that into perspective. It's even this terrible crisis within the church. What can we do to grow and help others to grow closer to God? And what can we do for the truth? Because obviously one of the things is there's been a lot of lying and deception going on. The father of lies has had his heyday, and we need the truth to come out. We need the lies to be revealed and the truth to come out and really sweep the house clean, purge our church, our beloved mother, our beloved family. The church really needs to be purged and to start anew from the bottom up with just what you were talking about before, too, like in the early centuries of Christianity, where people were willing to die to themselves, to die a physical death, to die to themselves, to really to build the church up, to sacrifice themselves for the church.
Yeah, and in the story, when I remember hearing that homily for the first time, I was a little surprised when the perfect day was not the peace of Christ. Whether it was from the hilltop looking upon the quiet village, or the joy of the mother looking upon her infant. I'm going, okay, to me, I would have said, both of those suggest the peace of Christ. And not that they don't, but the homily had a deeper, was reaching further, and to make a point. And that's when the man giving the homily brought up the storm, and the way he ended it, I'm going, okay, just a totally different way of looking at things and looking at suffering, and looking at hard times. So that and some other things over the last couple of weeks has turned my attitude around, dramatically, in that the anger has been replaced with this, okay, it's going to be a lot of work, but we're going to get there, and it's going to be so much better when we arrive, at the end of, like I said, this cleanup.
And what a privilege to be able to work also without a Christian background. Work is meaningless. Work is so hard and sometimes hopeless, but as Christians, we know that our work has meaning. We know that we can work in a physical sense and in a spiritual sense. In a physical sense, we have a job that pays some money, but in a spiritual sense, we can turn things around. We can pray for the church. We can pray for those that we love. We can pray for anything at all and make a difference. And that's marvelous that God lets us participate in His creation through our work. And work is hard. However, when we do it with love, with a redemptive meaning, it's a little bit easier. And when we have perfect love for others, perfect love for the church, it's a joy to be able to do something to help others, to help the church. If we did not have the ability to work for the church by praying, or to work to support our family, that would be miserable. So as Christians, we just need to appreciate the opportunity we have when we do have a job, because a good job is hard to find, or any job is hard to find. So we need to be grateful for that. And we need to be grateful and thankful for God that we can make such a difference in our prayers, in our sacrifices, in our fasting, and impact worldwide, like St. Teresa of the Child Jesus did. She was in the convent, never went anywhere, but had a universal impact, and we're so blessed to be able to share in that privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all good thoughts on Labor Day, that nothing should be taken for granted. We should be grateful, and gratitude, I firmly believe that gratitude is the secret to sanctity and to falling in love with Jesus. I remember Dr. Rhonda says all the time, she's always saying thank you to God for the pen, the pencil, the frying pan, the meat, the table, the fork, the spoon, and it's through continual gratitude that we become holy and that we can make a difference. So that's a good lesson for all of us today, just to be continual aware of what God has blessed us with, and know and realize He has selected it from all eternity, and He knows what to put in our path. So we've got like a minute and a half left. Do you have any closing words before we say a closing prayer?
I'll say a few words. In this life that we're living, it's always going to be one difficulty, one challenge after another. That's what brings us close to God, and it's also what makes us long for heaven, the perfect bliss, the perfect joy, no difficulties, no suffering. If we had on earth a perfect life, if things really worked out pretty much the way we wanted them to, we would not think about heaven. We would not desire or yearn for heaven, long for heaven with such intensity, which is what God wants us to do. He does not want us to be satisfied here on this earth. He wants us to be with him, and he wants us to want to be with him.
Well said, Maria. Thank you. We have less than half a minute, so I thank Maria and Dave for being here with us and sharing their ideas, and we thank our audience for coming, and we ask that God bless all of you listening, all of your families, and you're panelists, and we look forward to being with you again next week. So thank you, God, and we praise you, and we ask you to make us aware of your presence in all that we do. Amen. Goodbye.
Amen. Goodbye. And have a happy Labor and Leisure Day. Goodbye. God bless you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.